So welcome to our Caregivers Club. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited tonight to talk about an important topic. I think it's never too early to start planning for our children's future. And when I think about, even my own kids being adults, it seems like it could be very far away. But the time is going so fast. My boys are turning 7 and 4 next month, and it's like it went so fast. So I know most of you have children that are older than that. So it's coming, guys. So we need to get ready. And I'm really excited to introduce Kenzie Clark, who is the co-founder of Able Transition Consulting. And she's going to talk to us about, helping us to plan for transitioning and the services that her organization is able to offer. So I will turn it over to you, Kenzie.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I appreciate it. Can you guys all hear me well? Okay, great. So it's really great to be here tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you guys in just a second. We are going to, through our time together tonight, talk about transition. And so there's a lot of information I'm going to give you. So I have a presentation. So I will be showing that as we kind of go through tonight. And then as well, afterwards, it'll take about 30 to 40 minutes, and then I'll have time for questions so we can talk and have dialogue. And if you do have a question, you can definitely put it in the chat box. Last time I wasn't able to see the questions, but Amanda can collect them, and we can absolutely make sure we get your question answered. So I am going to share my screen with you guys, and we will get started. All right, can everybody see that? All right, so hello, welcome to our session tonight. I'm going to introduce myself in just a minute, but before we get started, you can grab your phone. We have a free download for you. So you can text the word ABLE, ABLE, to the number 1-833-235-1924. Feel free to also screenshot this page too if you want to do it afterwards. That can be really helpful too.
And I will also send you guys this information afterwards. So if you don't get the number now, or you just are doing, a million other things, I'll send it out in an email tomorrow.
So when you text the number, it's going to ask for your email as you text, and then you're going to get an email dropped to your inbox, and it's going to have the download of our basic transition timeline and 10 transition tips to successful adulthood. So hopefully you're able to text or take a screenshot of it, and I can't wait for you guys to get our download. Before we begin, also thank you to Keen, thank you to Amanda. You guys are involved in an incredible organization, and so we're really I'm thankful to be here tonight and to be speaking about ABLE. So here's what we're going to cover tonight, because people always want to know, and I think it's important for you to know up front what you're going to get out of it. We're going to talk about what transition is, the problems with transition, what transition involves, and how to prepare right now while your child is still in the school system. Or is not yet 21. We're going to be covering planning, person-centered planning, lifelong planning. You're going to leave today with having at least 1 to 2 concrete steps that you can do after our session. And then we're going to have a time for questions. So a little bit about ABLE transition. At ABLE, our mission is we seek to provide a path forward for individuals with disabilities through unique and comprehensive transition, lifelong, person-centered planning and bridge building. And our vision is to see all people living high quality lives while having a seat at the community table. So that's a little bit about our mission and our vision here at ABLE Transition. And then a little about me. I am the founder and managing director and transition specialist at Able Transition Consulting. I'm a former special education teacher. I've taught ages 5 to adult at the post-secondary education level. And my master's degree is in transition through the University of Kansas. And so the master's degree of transition is a very, very new program offering. It's only been around for about 8 to 9 years, and only 4 universities in the United States even offer the program. So it's important to know that the transition process, the transition specialist, is very new in our world today. And really, the transition process, we're going to talk more about it today, um, but we're going to understand a little bit about why it's so important and what it does. So, sorry if you hear my dog in the background. I'm home working from home, so life right now. Anyway, the transition problem, or what is transition? It's the process of preparing for and the action of moving from high school to post secondary education, employment, and independent living. Then the process of actually living it out, right? The process of being and becoming an adult throughout your life or throughout an individual's life. So it's a very important process. Why are we talking about transition before your child is 18, 19, 20, 21? Why think about it now and earlier? Research. Research shows the earlier you understand what transition is, the earlier you begin to plan for it, the more success that the individual adult will have in their adult life in all areas, socially, emotionally, financially, vocationally. There is just higher quality life outcomes the earlier you plan for transition, the earlier you talk about it. So that's why we're having this tonight. We're going to talk about it earlier, because the earlier you plan, the more success there will be in the future and the more peace of mind that you can have now. So what I want you to do, this is an activity, because I want you to get something from tonight. You don't have to write it down if you don't have a piece of paper, but you can think about it or you can write it, whatever you would like. I want you to think about or write down, what are 3 of your biggest concerns or obstacles you feel as you think about your child's future. It could be, I don't know where they're going to work. I don't know where they're going to live. I don't know how they're going to make money. I'm concerned about their social and emotional well-being. But I'm just going to give you guys a minute. You can write it down if you want to, if that's helpful, or you can just think about it. So I'm just going to give you some space and time now, just for about a minute. And as you think about those specific concerns and obstacles, I want you to consider too, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about those obstacles? Um, where do you think the support will come from? All of the above, yeah. Mm.
You can share in the chat box if you'd like. We have the chat box open.
Thank you guys. Y'all are sharing some great things. Yeah. Thank y'all for sharing. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, as I was a special ed teacher and worked with so many families, right, it was interesting because I had these questions too. And I was the special educator and I needed to know the answers. But when I realized I didn't have them, that is why I ended up pursuing my master's degree in transition, because I wanted to help families answer that question in a whole and comprehensive way. So I really appreciate you guys sharing. And we're going to kind of go back to these points at the end of our time together. And so as we talk through things tonight about transition, definitely think about, hey, these are the things I'm concerned about, and just listen throughout the presentation and our time together for information regarding these things. So here's the current transition problem as we think about it broadly. And we work with families all over the state. So this is something that's happening, a phenomenon across the country. So currently, the rough estimate is around 80% of individuals with disabilities are unemployed. Now, many researchers are arguing and saying that due to the pandemic, that number has likely risen. But right now we don't have the research to back up the understanding of what that number looks like. Many individuals do not have access to long-term housing options and accessible housing. And it's not just the fact that there might not be openings or availabilities at apartments or homes, but that some of the availabilities and openings that are around are not high quality and are not great and viable options for individuals. Schools as well. Across the country, certain districts are doing it better than others. Typically, those districts are small, affluent, very wealthy districts that have good transition resources. But across the board, schools are not providing the essential transition resources and information to families. Um, and this is going to be recorded, right, Amanda? So families, if you want to go back and watch this again, you're totally available to do that. So don't worry about writing everything down. It'll be recorded. Um, the waiting list for Medicaid waivers in various states is up to 15 years for essential funding. And then many transition plans in the school system are not implemented to fidelity. And what I mean by that is there's the spirit of the law of IDEA, and then there's the reality of the law, like the written law. And so the spirit of the law, really enacting what it should mean and what the transition plan should be, is just not happening. Seamless transition is also not occurring. And what that means is the idea of seamless transition is that what an individual is doing their last day in high school is what they're doing the first day after they graduate. That's not happening across the country. And there are not transition specialists who are working with families. So if your district does have a transition specialist, the majority of the time that specialist is working with a special education teacher, helping them access what's called workspace learning or helping them with transition IEPs, but they're not supporting the families. So this is a big reason why I started Able Transition, is to help answer a lot of these essential problems. So we're going to zoom up and pretend like we're in an airplane at a 30,000 foot level. What does transition involve? Because transition is complex, it's nuanced, and it involves many things. The first thing that it involves that we do is lifelong person-centered planning. Transition also involves strategic financial planning, where you work with a special needs financial planner who will be able to support you pretty specifically. Transition also involves working with an attorney, developing a special needs trust with a high quality attorney that is trusted. It involves workspace learning, getting out in the community, generalizing skills. It involves the transition IEP from the school system. It involves a conversation around guardianship. It involves housing, transportation, moving to adult services, applying for and navigating all of those various options, as well as accessing funding through Social Security income and waivers, Medicaid waivers, depending on the state you live in, and more. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed. So just take a really deep breath and remember that there are a lot of people on this journey, and that this is a big part of what we do. What we love is helping people, take them on this journey. And I think the first step to successful transition is awareness, right? Similarly to being an advocate, you got to be aware first. And so to understand transition, you have to be aware of what it involves. A big piece of where you are at currently now is the school system. So to understand the school system's job around transition, you've got to understand a little bit about IDEA. And legally, a transition IEP is typically, the assessments are started around federally age 14. Some states bump it up to 16, some states bump it down to 12. But by the age of 14, your child should be taking transition assessments at the school level. So what does that mean? What is a transition assessment? They're going to be doing assessments to understand social and emotional needs, vocational skills, strengths, and abilities. And the transition IEP legally must have goals. Some states by 14, 16, or to 16 is some states. Federally by 16, you should have 3 goals. The first is a goal around post-secondary education. The second is employment, and the third is independent living. Then once you have this transition IEP, at the very beginning of the IEP are these 3 goals, okay? That say, all right, after high school, Dylan will attend, etc., like this vocational training program. After high school, Dylan will be employed XYZ, right? Similarly with independent living. Now, the rest of the IEP, once this transition IEP is put into place, Every other goal, whether it's a functional goal, social, if it's a speech goal, if it's math, reading, ELA, they all need to be centered around these three transition goals. Okay. So if a goal for employment is to work at as a cashier at a local grocery, then the goals with math need to be functional goals that will support their ability to be able to be a cashier. So around money math, right? Addition, subtraction. They also need to have goals, whether it's social and emotional, about interacting with customers, customer service, if that makes sense. So every other goal in the IEP must be what must come back and relate to these three goals: post-secondary education, employment, and independent living, because it is a transition IEP and it must be centered around these goals. Um, your child at this point, and I personally believe earlier, but they need to be at these transition IEP meetings because you are planning for their adulthood and their future, and they need to be in the room. So you need to talk to the educator and make sure that they are going to be invited and that they get an invitation. Now, depending on what you're going to be discussing, and if the child wants to come or doesn't, that's something that you can decide as a family unit, but they need to be invited. That is essential, and having them at the meeting and having their voice there will be really powerful. The transition assessments also that your child is given must be age appropriate and based around their needs, strengths, and abilities, right? For example, I saw situations when I was doing research at the University of Kansas where an adult who used an AAC device and used symbols was given a written test as a transition assessment, and they were not able to appropriately interact with the assessment, and so the results were not valid whatsoever. So you need to make sure that your child is given appropriate assessments that are appropriate for their age, their needs, their abilities, and their strengths. So that's really critical. And so even asking your district, what transition assessments do you use? How do you scaffold? How do you accommodate? What transition assessment is my child going to be given? Because making it accessible is going to be really important. And so you need to make sure that they are adapted to your child's ability to access them, if that makes sense to everybody. So being an advocate for your child is a really big part of what you're going to do. And so if the transition assessments are going to be appropriate, you need to know that they are appropriate. And so you have the full right to ask them that. Yes. So perfect. The child should be invited to meetings typically around the age of 13, 14. Now, legally, they need to be invited when when the transition IEP is starting. So since seventh grade, age wise, if she was 12, 13, that sounds about right. Um, Personally, even when I taught younger students, I would always invite them to the meeting because sometimes they had really great and incredible things to offer because it was their meeting, right? It's funny because all these adults meet in another room planning someone else's education, and I think having them in the room really adds their voice. So yes, you're absolutely right that they did a great job then. Um, for your daughter. So that's really good to hear because sometimes it doesn't happen. Um, Workspace learning is essential in the school system. Now, this is not happening right now due to the coronavirus pandemic, obviously, right? We're all home, people are virtually learning. But when we are able to open up in a way that is safe again, advocating for workspace learning is essential. So, what is workspace learning? Workspace learning is where your child actually goes out into the community and works a quote unquote job, right? Unless they're in the occupational course of study class, they don't have to have paid opportunities. But we can talk about that if you want to talk to me about the OCS curriculum. But workspace learning is when they're going out with their special education teacher, their paraprofessionals, and they are working in the community, right? They're getting real life skills. Why is this so important? Well, they're generalizing skills that they're being taught in the school system out into the workforce, right? So they're learning with a lot of support around them, which is going to help to support their abilities as they grow older. This also shows when a child or a teenager, right, accesses workspace learning opportunities, they have higher quality outcomes when it comes to having a job, employment, when it comes to the finances, the money that they do make from their job. Workspace learning supports higher community engagement, higher independence, higher social skills, and functioning skills. Okay, so there's just higher quality of life outcomes when a child accesses workspace learning. Now, right now, that's not happening due to the pandemic. If, say, prior to the pandemic, your child was 15, 16 years of age and they were not going out in the community whatsoever, and the special education teacher and district were unwilling to access workspace learning for your child, what we tell our clients is use your network. Use your network to see if you or a family member can take your child to someone you know if they own a store or a shop, or they work in an attorney's office, or they work at a local bank. Getting your child into these situations and scenarios where they could even have some type of like summer internship, or just to go job shadow for an hour, going and looking and learning, talking to a local grocer, right? Talking to different individuals and getting them involved in the community is going to be important to help them see what's available and what's out there. Um, with the transition IEP, another important piece and component to understand is get outside agencies involved. One of the main agencies that many school districts do have contracts with is vocational rehabilitation. Now, vocational rehabilitation is a federal program, but it's mandated at the state, local, district level. So it's going to be different depending on where you live. For example, when we have clients in Boston who have a great voc rehab program, clients in North Carolina in a certain area that have great, and clients on the opposite in North Carolina, the opposite side, who have a terrible voc rehab. So it's really going to depend on your local district, your agency, and who's working there. But the important piece about having agencies like vocational rehabilitation, the ARC, wherever you might live, whoever the community workforce solution options are, is that when your child is younger, they're going to already be on their case, right? They're going to be involved in those meetings. They're going to be able to know what are their strengths, abilities, needs, and skills, so that as they get older, they can provide job supports, job coaches, so that when they do graduate, you've already had this great, wonderful history with them where they know your child, they know the supports that are needed, and they're going to be able to access job supports prior to graduating. So invite them to the meeting. If your special education teacher is not inviting an outside agency member and representative to come to the meeting, ask them why not. Ask them, do you have a contract with Voc Rehab? Why aren't they here? And if they're not, as the parent, you have the right to invite them to the meeting. So I tell families that's crucial for the future. So, right, if your child is not yet 18, begin to think about guardianship. I am not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I do not know you. I do not know your child and really what their ability is. But I'm just going to give you an overarching understanding of what guardianship is and what the alternatives and the continuum is to guardianship. And I'm also going to, Amanda, you can remind me after this session, I'm going to send Amanda a continuum guardianship document to send out to you guys all so you can have access to it. So what is guardianship? The legal definition is guardianship is the legal relationship between a guardian and a ward. The guardian makes the decisions for the ward whom the state deems insufficient of making substantial decisions, managing affairs, or communicate important decisions. So types of guardianship. There are different types of guardianship, from general guardianship to guardianship of the person, guardianship of the estate, limited guardianship, interim guardianship. There's conservatorship, there's power of attorney. There are multiple options. Supported decision making. There's so much when we think about guardianship. And Amanda's going to send you the continuum, and so you can look at all the options for what guardianship is: conservatorship, supported decision making, power of attorney. Right? There's so much, and it's really all about what's the purpose of it. It's securing your child's safety and protecting them if they're vulnerable. Especially in regards to health, medical decisions, and finances. So I'm going to get Amanda to have that handout, and that will be really helpful. What I also say is working with a trusted attorney can be helpful. Now, you don't need an attorney to get guardianship whatsoever, but if you work with someone who knows your child and knows your family, that could be helpful as well. Begin to also think about benefits. Okay, what are the benefits going to look like when they're an adult? So there is the benefit of Social Security income and Medicaid. You can apply when your child is 17 and 8 months. If your state has a really bad backlog of SSI applicants, that can be helpful. Most of the time, we tell families as soon as they hit 18, that's when you should apply. But if they're really backlog, applying right before their 18th birthday will mean that the application gets turned in right when they're 18, and that can sometimes help. It's important to know that if your child does have SSI, then you have a limit if your child has a bank account to how much money can be in that bank account. And right now, the limit is around $2,000. I believe it went down a little bit to around 1,900, but Social Security sets that asset limit. For how much they can have in a bank account with their name on it. Or else if it goes over that amount of funds, then they can lose the benefits. Most families don't know, and we always think it's important to tell families that when a parent retires, a child's Social Security income, SSI, will change over to what's called SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. And that just is a switch and a changeover that families don't really know about until it happens. And that switchover actually will result in your child making more money. More money does come from SSDI. You're allowed to make more money in a job through SSDI than through SSI. And when you do have SSI, when you have a job, there's a limit to how much money you can make per month, and you have to report the earnings. There's also Medicaid waivers that are in every state. And the Medicaid waivers, what their job largely is to provide funding for community vocational support. And these Medicaid waivers have up to 12 years of a wait time. So the earlier you put your name on the waiting list, the absolute better. In several states, there's what's called B3 services. And this is a Medicaid service that if you do not have the Medicaid waiver, then you can get these B3 service fundings that will help you basically get funds while you're still waiting for the waiver. There's also, you also should know about vocational rehabilitation too. They provide funds for things like job coaches and job supports. So wherever you're at, whether you are working with an organization like the ARC or you're working with some place like Community Workforce Solutions, whatever your agency might be, that the job coach that provides your job coach for your child and job support is funded through vocational rehabilitation. So that's why I say having that relationship with them is important. And then also think about how you and your child are going to be benefited from local community supports, natural supports, organizations, and engagements in your area. So like Keene is a great place to be plugged in now to get the benefits that they provide for you and your family. Then you need to think about the financial future for your child. And in this, we're going to discuss a special needs trust, the ABLE account, and the Medicaid waiver. Yes, yay, Keen, as Amanda said. The special needs trust, what is it? If you've never heard of it, we'll discuss it. So the special needs trust benefits a child with a disability while ensuring their benefits are secure. So essentially, the special needs trust is a long-term trust savings fund that families develop, and the funds are basically, think about like a moat and a big gate around the special needs trust. The special needs trust is deemed unavailable to Social Security. So no matter how much money is in that trust, the child will never lose their benefits, which is very crucial and essential. So the trust protects the benefits and makes the assets unavailable. Special needs trust can be funded through life insurance policies, donations from parents, uncles, aunts, grandma, grandpa, next door neighbor. Money can be put into the account over time, or it can all be funded with a life insurance policy. And it will be funded when the policy goes into effect. And there's no limit to how much money can go into a trust. Now, the essential part of this is working with a trusted, qualified attorney. So if you have a basic family attorney and they've maybe done 2 special needs trusts in their life, I would maybe question utilizing them because legislation does change. So working with a qualified professional is essential. And we provide resources to qualified professionals who we trust all the time because we want to ensure that your child's benefits are protected. A big thing to note here in this section is that you're going to have uncomfortable conversations with money about family members. If your child is in a will of a grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, if their name is listed in the will as to receiving money, that can jeopardize their benefits. So developing the special needs trust is essential because what that means is that you can say, hey, I understand they can't be on their will, on their will, grandma. My child can't, your grandchild can't be on your will, but their special needs trust can be on your will, right? So their special needs trust can get funded, and that protects them and makes their assets unavailable. So having that conversation is really important. There are also ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts have gotten so much better over the last 3 years thanks to incredible advocates. And what an ABLE account is, it's a tax advantage savings account for individuals with disabilities who receive SSI or SSDI. It protects the individual's benefits as well. So that the money in an ABLE account is also deemed unavailable. The assets are unavailable by Social Security. Now, it's different than a special needs trust in that you can have a debit card and a debit card with your ABLE account. A lot of families use it as a basic saving for the child's money and as their basic checking account, because you never have to worry if you've gone over that $2,000 asset limit, because the ABLE account is protected. Now, the maximum gift anyone can make per year where you don't have to report it to the IRS in the ABLE account is $15,000. The maximum amount you can have in an ABLE account ever is $100,000. You can't have more than $100,000 in it. Um, and lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the Medicaid waiver. So the Medicaid waiver we talked about earlier as a benefit. So understanding your state's waiver, how to apply for it, when to apply for it, getting your name on the waiting list as soon as possible is critical, because the purpose is to provide funding for, like I said earlier, home and community supports and services. So the goal of that money and funding is to help the individual maximize their self-determination, their advocacy skills, their self-sufficiency, for community integration, higher socialization, and more. So these waiver funds are really important and pretty crucial. Then lastly, this piece is what ABLE transition does, is person-centered planning. So person-centered transition planning is long-term planning for individuals with disabilities. It's collaborative goal setting where we work to map out a vision for the future. Now, we work with clients who have kiddos ages 5 to up to 40 years of age. So if your child is about 16 plus, yeah, good thing to note, Amanda, is that in New York, it's different in every state. You will have to pay a small monthly fee to have an ABLE account in New York. Amanda, is it around like $1 or $2 per month?
Yeah, I think so. I can look up the exact number, but I think it's about it might even be $2 or $3 actually.
Okay,
I'll look at it.
perfect. Thank you for bringing that up too. I appreciate that. Um, so for younger individuals ages 5 to 15 at ABLE, what we do is we build educational transition plans where we help families basically map out how to prepare for transition around the age of 18 and how to get there. And so we're going to talk about, we build out a visual plan, and it's really crucial because the earlier you plan, the more success later on. So we build that for ages 5 to 15. And then if your child is 16 plus, we build what's called the full transition package. Yeah, Suzanne, about $13 every quarter. So the full transition package, what that is if your child is over the age of 16, we develop a visual plan for 20 years out into the future, as well as a written plan. So if your child is 8 or 24, they're going to get an extensive written plan. But if they're older than 16, it's going to have much more specifics and targeted for longer out into the future. And the importance of this and the reason these plans are so important is because they're built around the strengths and abilities of the individual. And we really go deep into the nitty gritty, especially when they're over 16. We are going to talk about every single area of adult life, from transition, from transportation up, to mental health, to your navigating healthcare, to nutrition, eating food, community supports, and engagement. And we're going to have goals, recommendations, and supports for how to move forward. The adult, likewise, is going to have goals, a visual plan that has goals for 20 years out. So you're constantly building momentum, moving forward, and you're getting the supports you need. We also ensure that when you work with us and you get your person-centered plan, that you are also going to be able to have access to any necessary, what we call bridges. So we like to think of ourselves as bridge builders. If you, when you come to work at ABLE, we're not a one-stop shop. We're going to make sure you have access to every agency, resource, anyone you need to be involved and engaged with, because it's crucial to have a community, right? And being able to know who special needs financial planners are that are trusted, right? Trusted transportation organizations, trusted agencies that are going to provide incredible job coaches and supports. So it's really, really important and crucial. Now, for our students, our clients who are 5 to 15, their goals are going to typically max out from 3 to 5 years in the future, because we want to be strategic with how we plan, and it would not be professional of us, or it would not be very we would not have integrity if we plan 20 years out in the future for an 8-year-old, right? But when they are 18 to 20, 16 to 22, we can absolutely do that. If your child is 30, we'll plan 20 years out into their future as well. And a big part of what we do too for families, what this does for you as a parent, right, is it takes a lot of the fear and the weight and the overwhelming what's next and all the nebulous that you have in your mind. It kind of wraps all that up. And what we do is we help you really be strategic in your plan so that you can have peace now, because that's so important, right? You've got so much weight on your shoulders, and it's really critical to be able to help you and your child have the best future. So our goal, right, is high quality adult lives for the individual and peace now, so that weight is taken off. This was a client we just finished up with last month that said, finally having all of our ideas and our hopes we've been thinking about in a plan on paper visually for my son and written out for us is one of the best feelings. The various areas of his adult life that I did not even think about, the plan covered, and we are grateful. I didn't know what to fully expect, but this is far beyond what I could have hoped for. Thank you. And so that's our goal, right? Is that we support families so that they can have peace now for a path forward later. And able to, we're 100% referral based, so we don't market anything. We really just rely on our incredible clients and trusted advisors, because what we do is really important, and we work with clients all over the country because no one is doing long-term planning for adults in the way that is really critical. So I want you to think about right now, here are some concrete steps that you can start to think about. So if your child is still in the school system, do you need to review that transition IEP? Do you need to read those goals again? Do you need to make sure they're actually attainable? Do you need to look at the IEP and say, are all of the goals relating back to the transition IEP? If your child has transition assessments, do you need to ask the special education teacher, hey, what are the transition assessments you're using? Can I see them? What are the results of the transition assessment? Let's talk about that. Do you need to have a meeting? If your child is 17 or 8, 16, 15, and you've never talked about the transition IEP, do you need to call an IEP meeting? Do you need to get the team together? Do you need to figure out specifically what other supports you might need? Do you need to get voc rehab involved? Housing. Now, this is one I didn't touch on because that's what we talk about sometimes with our older adults. Housing. There's a housing crisis across the country, so it's not just in New York, it's not just in North Carolina, it's not just in California, but across the country, like we talked about earlier, there's that housing crisis. So begin to think about housing. What would that look like? Do you know about housing options in your area? Do you know about quality homes? Or do you need to find out more? Do you need to find out about guardianship? Do you need to apply for guardianship? Do you need to talk to a trusted attorney? And when you're having the guardianship conversation, your child must be involved in that discussion as well. Their voice needs to be a part of that discussion. And ultimately, you've got to figure out what's best to protect them. You need to start thinking about benefits. Do you need to look into SSI, how to apply for Medicaid? Do you need to look at, hey, what is my Medicaid waiver in my state? How do I apply? Do you need to learn about more community supports in your area? Do you need to develop a special needs trust? Do you need to contact a trusted attorney? Do you need to talk to a special needs financial planner? Do you need to learn more about an ABLE account? Do you need to open an ABLE account? And then person center plan, contacting us, scheduling a strategy call so we can get your plan started for you. So what I want you to think about, that was a lot of information, I know. So you can take a deep breath. And I want you to take the next 2 minutes, and I want you to write down 3 steps you can take in the next 3 months. Okay, so it's 1 step per month. Okay, is that I need to call an IEP meeting. I need to just read the transition IEP. I need to call a trusted attorney. I need to develop that special needs trust. I need to call Able Transition and talk about developing a plan. I need to apply for SSI. I need to apply for a Medicaid waiver. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes. Really think about what are realistic goals, 3 realistic steps you can take that need to be done now. I'm going to let you have 2 minutes. So take your time. So I also want to note too that there are post-secondary options for your child. There are post-secondary options for individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities. There are various programs at local community college. There are inclusive programs at colleges. Um, and I'm going to share with Amanda too, for you just to start thinking about it now. Think College is an incredible organization that we love here at Able Transition. And they have on their website every college listed out that is an inclusive post-secondary option, or that is just a post-secondary options for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that's also important to know. So I will share with Amanda, like what I promised you guys, Think College's information, as well as the guardianship continuum document. And yeah, perfect. So after you've made your 3 steps, now it is time for questions. So I'd love to be able to answer any questions you have about anything
So
that I can answer.
we had a question come in. How are how do your services work and how is it billed?
So how do our services work? So that's a great question. Unfortunately, Medicaid does not recognize transition specialist as a necessary or a billable service. So specifically with what we do, if your child is aged 5 to 15, we have what's called our basic transition package, where we work with you guys to build your education person-centered transition plan. And if they're older than 16, we have the full transition package. And so right now we are private pay. We do have some scholarships, as well as we have payment plans to make it accessible, to make that, because that's really important to us as well. And when you work with us, you're always going to be a part of our family. So former clients hear from us all the time. A lot of families who work with us when their kiddo is younger plan to come back when their child is between 18 to 22, so we can build out that 20-year plan. So they can have their education plan and then their lifelong transition plan too, which is important. So it's a package plan. Typically, it takes about 2 to 3 months to work with us, and then we'll follow up with all of our former clients every 6 weeks just to check in, see how things are going, get any questions answered, and if you need follow-up support, we have options for follow-up support as well. So that is how we do it at Able Transition, and I'll share with you guys too. The best way for us to just have a conversation is to schedule a strategy call with us. And I can drop the link in the chat box too. And the important part about the strategy call is that it's 45 minutes, it's totally free. And when you have the strategy call with us, what that's going to do is it's going to give us time to really have an in-depth conversation. You fill out a questionnaire beforehand, so I know exactly, this is my link specifically, so like where you are, what's going on, who your child is. And so that way, when we have the conversation and we meet, we can see what you need so we can get the best plan moving forward for you. And we can discuss specifically your needs too, because every family is so different, right? And what's important to know about our planning at Able is that it is unique, comprehensive, strength-based, and totally different. So no plans we've ever done have ever looked the same. Our plans are also based all on research-based methods, because outcomes are really important to us.
So we have another question here. How can you obtain a credible special needs planner?
Financial planner or attorney?
I will wait for them to clarify.
Hi, that will be financial.
Financial. So I have a great person I can connect you with.
Yes,
if you want me to connect.
Yep, that would be great. And we also have a financial planner.
Oh yeah, you do
for
too.
For our next Caregivers Club, which is going to be on March 5th. We have someone coming in who is a special needs financial planner and is going to be talking all about this. So she's going to be talking about all of the changes now that we have a new government administration and what that means for like benefits and things like that. So she would also be a good person to connect with, and she's done a workshop for us last year, so we will definitely send you all the invitation to join that session as well.
Yes, and when you're thinking about a special needs financial planner, many of them can have a special needs planning certificate that they can acquire, but it's also important that they're a CFP first and foremost. And I would say too that they need to have a large experience working with multiple special needs families. So if they're like, oh, I have a certificate in special needs financial planning, but I've only ever done it for 2 families and I haven't looked up current legislation, then that might not be a great option, right? It's someone who is up to date, who's qualified, who has that certification, and who has a CFP too. It's going to be important, which is really great.
Kenzie, I actually have a question. So,
Yeah.
Can a special needs trust be created at any point? Like, can an adult, someone who's already an adult, create a special needs trust?
Yeah, if your child is 34, you can create a special needs trust for them at 34. Absolutely.
Great.
You can also do it when they're 2 years old, right? There's not a limit.
Yeah. So can like a disabled adult create one for themselves?
Yeah, with the proper funding. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other large group questions?
Feel free to unmute, guys, if you have a question, or if you prefer to type your question, you can do it that way too. If you end up with a question later, you can, still schedule the call with Kenzie and talk about those, or you can email. You can email those questions to me. Yep. Oh, great. You can email either of us, and we'll work together to get you an answer.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have any other questions about anything we talked about tonight? Comments or concerns? Yeah,
awesome.
Of course.
Lots of thank yous. Lots of thank yous coming in. Yeah, thank you so much, Kenzie. This is all really great information. And when you send over the information, the Guardian form that you mentioned, the Think College information, all of that, I will put everything together in an email along with the recording of this, and I will send it to all of you. So if you want to review the slides, you'll be able to do that. And then you can also text her number so that you can get those tips right to your phones.
Yes. Well, thank you all so much for having me and spending a little bit of your time tonight. I know that I'm on East Coast time too, so I know it's late. It's a Friday, but I appreciate it. I hope this was helpful, and I would definitely love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again to Amanda.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening. We'll see you all soon. We have a program tomorrow at 11 a.m. So have your kids ready for a good workout tomorrow morning at 11. Bye, guys.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.